Vishnupadaaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamine
Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamine
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastyavari Sakarine
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyatari Sakarine
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Jai Gauranga Mahaprabhu
Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna
Krishna
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Hare
Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol
Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev
Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev
जय श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की
जय।
जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी
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 जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
यशोदानंदन व्रजजनरञ्जन
यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन
यशोदानंदन व्रजजनरञ्जन
यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन
यमुनातीरावनचारी
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 जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी
जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी
जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी
जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी
जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
यशोदानंदन व्रजजनरञ्जन
यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन
यशोदानंदन व्रजजनरञ्जन
यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन
यमुनातीरावनचारी
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 जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी
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 जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
जय गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी
यशोदानंदन व्रजजनरञ्जन
यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन
यशोदानंदन व्रजजनरञ्जन
यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन
यमुनातीरावनचारी
यमुनातीरावनचारी
जय राधा माधवा कुंज बिहारी
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 जय श्री श्री राधा माधव की
जय
जय श्री श्री राधा गोविंद माधव की जय श्री श्री नरसिंह भगवान की जय श्री श्री पंच तत्व की श्रील प्रभुपाद की His Holiness Tama Krishna Goswami Gurudev ki His Holiness Bhakti Vikna Vinash Narsingham Gurudev ki Ananta Gauri Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai Gaur On behalf of all the devotees gathered today, we want to thank His Grace Parthasarathi Prabhu and family for having invited us on the auspicious occasion of the housewarming ceremony. In the morning it was very nice because we had a nice yajna and the atmosphere in this house feels extremely sattvic. Many of us are very indebted to Parthasarathi Prabhu for his preaching in Krishna consciousness for so many years in Singapore. Those of us who joined the movement in the 80s, he was one of the senior devotees by then. I personally always admired his strict sadhana. I always admired his demeanor, which in terms of Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita is considered to be dhira. The ability to be equipoised and to accept things as Krishna's plans. So Parthasarathi Prabhu, we are very inspired to have you always in our congregation. And even till today, Prabhu is so active in preaching. In fact, I think if you want to count the number of programs that we have in the center, actually Prabhu runs the most number of programs between Monday and Friday. He's not only preaching Krishna consciousness to whoever he meets, but he also preaches to them who are outside of the usual Indian group of people. And that's not very easy. It's not easy to present spirituality to persons who are not from the Vedic tradition. And he continues to do that. So we're very happy to be here. Today's program is auspicious for two reasons. One is, of course, welcoming the Lord into the new house. That's the meaning of housewarming, actually. The house is warmed up by the presence of the Lord. And when the Lord comes into the house, His pure devotees are always there. And that's why we have our Acharya Srila Prabhupada, and we have His Holiness Tama Krishna Goswami Maharaj, the spiritual master of Parthasarathi Prabhu, who was actually the first GBC in Singapore, who guided and brought Krishna consciousness into Singapore. And today is the appearance day of His Holiness Bhakti Vikna Vinash Narsingha Maharaj. And Narsingha Maharaj is a very, very dear and cherished pure devotee of the Lord, who has given shelter to so many disciples in Singapore and who continues to inspire many devotees. So today is an opportunity for us to also hear his lecture with whatever humility I can offer at the senior devotees' feet. We speak a verse from Bhagavatam for a few minutes, and then after that we will also hear Maharaj's lecture, and we hope that the devotees can glorify Maharaj, and we end the program with nice arati and kirtan. I think I've given out the verse to everyone. I didn't have so many copies, but in today's day and age, you can always turn on your phones. It's not very problematic. The verse is Canto 3, Chapter 5, Text 40. It's entitled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam namaskritya
Narayanam Namaskritya
Naram chaiva narottamam
Naram Chaiva Narottamam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam
Tato Jayamudiraye.
Tato Jayamudiraye.
Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam,
Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam,
which is the very means of conquest,
which is the very means of conquest,
one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead,
unto the personality of God,
Narayana,
Narayana,
unto Nara Narayana Rishi,
unto Narayana Rishi,
the supermost human being,
supermost human
unto
being,
Mother Saraswati,
unto Mother Saraswati,
the goddess of learning,
goddess of learning,
and unto Srila Vyasadeva,
and unto Srila Vyasadeva,
the author.
the author.
Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu
Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki.
By regular attendance
By regular attendance
in classes on the Bhagavatam
in classes on the Bhagavatam
and by rendering of service
and by rendering of service
to the pure devotee,
the pure devotee,
all that is troublesome to the heart
all that is troublesome to the heart
is almost completely destroyed,
is almost completely destroyed.
and loving service
And loving service
unto the personality of Godhead,
unto the personality of God,
who is praised with transcendental songs,
transcendental song,
is established
established
as an irrevocable fact.
as an irrevocable fact.
Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. So we chant from 3-5-40 today. Datar yad asmin bhava isha jiva
Datarasmin bhavati jiva
tapatrayena bihata na sharma
Tapatrena vitana sarna
Atman labhante bhagavan stavangri
Atman labhante bhagavam stavangri
Chayam savidyam ata ashrayema
Chayam savidyam latashema
Dhata yad asmin bhava isha jiva
Yasmin bhavaisha jiva
Tapatrayena bihata na sharma
Tapatrena vitana sarna
Atman labhante bhagavan stavangri
Atman labhante bhagavam stavangri
Chayam savidyam ata ashrayema
Chayam savidyam latashema
Dhatar yad asmin bhava isha jiva
Yasmin bhavati jiva
Tapatrayena bihata na sharma
Tapatrena vitana sarna
Atman labhante bhagavan stavangri
Atman labhante bhagavam stavangri
Chayam savidyam ata ashrayema
Chayam savidyam latashema.
Anyone like to chant?
Yadasmin bhavaisha jiva
Datar yadasmin bhavaisha jiva
Tapatrayena vigata na sarma
Tapatrayena bihata na sharma
Atman labhante bhagavam tavangri
Atman labhante bhagavam stavangri
Chayam chavidyam ata ashrayema
Chayam savidyam ata ashrayema
Dhatar yadasmin bhava isha jivas
Dhatar yadasmin bhava isha jivas
Tapatrayena bhihata na sharma
Tapatrayena bihata na sharma
Atman labhante bhagavam stavangri
Atman labhante bhagavam stavangri
Chayam savidyam ata ashrayema
Chayam savidyam latashema.
Matajis?
Dhatar yadasmin bhavaisha jivas तापत्रयेन विहता न शर्मा आत्मन् लभन्ते भगवन् सवाङ्घ्रि छायां सविद्यानताश्रयेम
Dataha, O Father, yet, because, asmin, in this, bhave, material world, Isha, O Lord, Jivaha, the living entities, Tapa, miseries, Trayena, by the three, Abhihataha, always embarrassed, no, never, Sharma, in happiness, Atman, self, Labhante, do gain, Bhagavan, O personality of Godhead, Tava, your, Angri Chaya, shade of your feet, Savidyam, full of knowledge, Ataha, obtain, Ashrayena, shelter. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Please repeat the translation. O Father, O Lord, O Personality of Godhead, the living entities in the material world can never have any happiness because they are overwhelmed by the three kinds of miseries. Therefore, they take shelter of the shade of your lotus feet, which are full of knowledge, and we also thus take shelter of them. Please hear the purport. The way of devotional service is neither sentimental nor mundane. It is the path of reality by which the living entity can attain the transcendental happiness of being freed from the three kinds of material miseries. Miseries arising from the body and mind, from other living entities, and from natural disturbances. Everyone who is conditioned by material existence, whether he be a man or beast or demigod or bird, must suffer from adhyatmika, bodily or mental, pains. Adi bhautika, pains, those offered by living creatures, and adi daivika, pains, those due to supernatural disturbances. His happiness is nothing but a hard struggle to get free from the miseries of conditional life. But there is only one way he can be rescued, and that is by accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The argument is that unless one has proper knowledge, one cannot be freed from material miseries is undoubtedly true. But because the lotus feet of the Lord are full of transcendental knowledge, acceptance of His lotus feet completes that necessity. We have already discussed this point in the first canto, 1-2-7. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yogaha Prayojitaha Janayati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayat Ahetukam. There is no want of knowledge in the devotional service of Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. He, the Lord, personally takes charge of dissipating the darkness of ignorance from the heart of a devotee. He confirms this in Bhagavad Gita 10:10. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam ye namam upayanti te. Empiric philosophical speculation cannot give one relief from the threefold miseries of material existence. Simply to endeavor for knowledge without devoting oneself to the Lord is a waste of valuable time. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jaganpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourange Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaure Tvishe Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripaha Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Shri Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. There's a nice verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. It's in 1.5.10. Nayad vachas chitrapadam hare yasho jagat pavitram praganita karhiche tadvayasam titam usanti manasaha nayatra hamsa niramanti ushikshayaha. Narada Muni is speaking at this moment to Vyas Bhagwan, and he's telling him one very important point. The reason being, Narada, when he came, he realized that Vyas Bhagwan was very dissatisfied. He had compiled the Vedas, he had performed so much austerity, and he's no less than a plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In fact, he's the literary incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But even then, he was dissatisfied. This point is very important because the reason why we have these auspicious ceremonies is because to create auspiciousness means to actually become satisfied. The real test of whether something is auspicious is how it impacts your heart. Auspiciousness doesn't mean that you may get material prosperity, because material prosperity in itself is not a guarantee to perpetual happiness. In fact, in this material world, perpetual happiness is a myth, because the nature of the world is such that for every moment of happiness, there will be an equal moment of anxiety or challenge. And that is true in the experience of all of us. We can't escape that. So Narada Muni was actually giving a very important and practical point to Vyas Bhagwan, that if you want to become satisfied, then the best way to attain satisfaction is by always gathering together and remembering the auspicious pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By doing that, we actually become satisfied. So there is a deep connection between auspiciousness and self-satisfaction. Bhagavatam uses the word self-satisfaction because until we satisfy the Atma, we cannot really be satisfied. All the time in this material world, the happiness that we think we are attaining is coming from external objects. And very often it is because of the fact that we try to engage our senses in gaining happiness from these objects. So if we see something beautiful, we are attracted to it. But we don't realize in becoming attracted to that physical beauty, the beauty of the physique, they will not last. It will go. And every other beautiful thing in this world eventually must deteriorate. Even our relationships eventually deteriorate in this material world. That's why Vyas Bhagwan felt dissatisfied. Because even though he had compiled everything which was inherently spiritual, the missing ingredient was to glorify the creator of this universe. Glorification just does not mean that we remember his wonderful qualities. Glorification implicitly also means that we also remember his pastimes. We also remember his name. And that's why we begin all our programs by the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. So if we really want to become self-satisfied in life, then we have to create auspiciousness around us. And to create auspiciousness around us, we need to put Krishna in the center of our activities. And that is why we have begun this program in this way. So actually, in this verse, na yat vachas. Vachas means vocabulary. Prabhupada translates the word vachas, even though we know vachaha means speech. But if you look at the actual word-to-word meaning, vachas is used as vocabulary. Because Prabhu's and Mataji's, whatever we speak will eventually influence what we think. And whatever that we are thinking will eventually come out in what we speak. There is only so much we can pretend. We can pretend to be sadhus until we speak. Or we can pretend to be sadhus until we act. A sadhu may look like sadhu when he's sitting very peacefully. But the moment he stands up and opens his mouth, that's when we know whether he's sadhu or not. So, na yad vachas, chitra padam. Chitra padam means that which decorates the body. So what decorates our life? It is actually the glories of the Lord. That is the decorative portion of us. So this verse tells us that the words that do not describe the glories and the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that vocabulary that doesn't describe Him, actually it is considered to be attractive to persons who are considered to be like crows. Tad vayasam tirtham. Tad vayasam tirtham. You know, tirtha is a holy place. Like today, because of this wonderful program, because of, the yajna that started, the deities giving darshan, Maharaja's Vyas Puja. So this place has become tirtha. It has become a holy place. We don't have to be in Vrindavan to have Vrindavan consciousness. Today, this place has become Vrindavan because Radha Govinda Madhav is actually here. So Bhagavatam tells us that if we don't use our words and our language to glorify Krishna, then our gatherings, they become like gatherings of the crows. And you know how crows come together. The crows are birds that don't come together in places where everything is clean. Generally, you see them hanging around either rubbish dumps or places of refuse. But then in this verse, there's also the description of the hamsas. The devotees of the Lord are considered to be like swans. And if you look at swans, they tend to congregate in places which are very beautiful, very scenic, very natural in habitat. So also, we must also watch what we speak. We must also watch amongst each other. What is the language that we use? What is the content of what we speak? If we speak about topics which are related to matter, naturally our mind will gravitate to matter. If we speak about topics related to spirit, naturally our mind and consciousness will move to spirit. And that is why Tad Vayasam Tirtham, the pilgrimage of the crows, is something we should avoid. Devotees have this special characteristic that wherever they go, they can actually turn a place into Tirtha. Why? Because the vocabulary and the words that we use, it is very valuable. So we must use it in the service of Krishna. And that is why we speak on Bhagavatam. An important verse because it touches on two important topics. The first is why living entities cannot be happy. It's a very affirmative statement. Who's speaking this verse? The Devatas. All the Devatas are praying at the lotus feet of Krishna. And if you look at the 3rd canto, 5th chapter, there are at least 7 to 8 verses in this chapter that only describe the power of concentrating on the lotus feet of the Lord. And this is so important. There is no other part of Bhagavatam that speaks so extensively of the lotus feet of the Lord except the 3rd canto, 5th chapter. And here, very nicely, the Devatas, who are very great, powerful beings, administrators of the universe, they address Krishna as O Father, because he is our spiritual father. The moment one accepts someone as one's father, that means we are accepting that that person is the source of who we are. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. So immediately when we start looking at Radha Govinda Madhav, our first prayer should be that he is our father. And the moment he becomes father to us, the implication is that we must become his sons and daughters. In other words, he is our source. Then they go on to say, O Lord. So they put father before Lord. Because father means we understand where we are coming from. Once we understand that we come from the source who is our creator, then automatically we can accept him as the Lord. And then after that, he is addressed as the personality of Godhead. Why? Because Krishna is a person. Krishna is not just something in the air. God is not just something that is speculative or mundane. Sometimes people say God is in the heart. I don't have to go to a temple, I don't have to pray. Imagine telling that to someone who you love very much. You tell them, I don't have to care for you because I always care for you. You're in my heart all the time. But you don't show anything, you don't express any expressions of love. After a while, people also get fed up. Why? Because they lose trust in you. So speaking is one thing, but acting on what you speak, that is devotional service. So Krishna is our Father, Krishna is the Lord, and Krishna is Supreme Person. And then they go on to say very nicely, the living entities in this material world, by the way, that's you and I, what do they declare? They say that they can never have any happiness. They don't say that they sometimes have happiness. They declare in very affirmative tone, they can never have any happiness. Because, and they give the reason, they are overwhelmed by the 3 kinds of miseries. So that is the first part of the verse actually. The fact that whatever happiness that we have, this verse tells us why that happiness is not actually genuine, because it cannot last. And it is because the nature of this world is temporary. You all know by now, you've lived long enough to know that whatever you touch, it stays very nice for a while and eventually deteriorates. Relationships start very nicely, eventually because of some misunderstanding or some distance, they deteriorate. Our health, we reach a peak at some point in our lives, and then after a while this body doesn't cooperate. And then after a while it becomes insurmountable. Everything that we have has a start, a deteriorating period, and an end. So Bhagavatam in 1.5.18, Bhagavatam very nicely tells us this point. Tasyeva heto prayate tako vido na labhyate yat brahmata uparyatha tan labhyate dukkavaran yatha sukham kale na sarvatra gabira rauhasa. So actually in that verse, Narada Muni again is telling Vyas Bhagwan that those who are really intelligent in this world, they observe this material world and they come to understand that whatever that they invest in, which is temporary, the investment also becomes temporary. And when something is temporary and you invest your heart and everything into it, and when it is temporary and it leaves you, the result is anxiety, pain, sadness, disappointment, lamentation. And that is known in Bhagavatam as abhihataha. Abhihataha means it is an embarrassing situation. It is an embarrassing situation. Because we keep doing it over and over and over again. It's like betting on the wrong horse every time. Every time. And that's why Bhagavatam says it is an embarrassment. Every time we come into this world, we expect, this time I'll find some permanent happiness. And again and again and again we are disappointed. And when something goes away, we invest that which we have lost into something else, hoping, this one will work out. This relationship doesn't work out, that one will work out. But by the time we end this life, we find that more often than not, everything has been a challenge. And while we have placed so much investment into that which will not bring any returns or which will bring temporary returns, we forget that that which is spiritual, Krishna, He is eternal. But we don't put our time and our effort and our love and our heart in investing with Him. And that is the reason why we become anxious. So every time we become anxious, we should understand that somewhere the anxiety is coming because our investment has been placed in something temporary. And because it is chanchal, meaning up and down, our happiness will flow with that too. But the beauty of this material world is that while the happiness is not permanent, the miseries are also temporary. That's the good thing about life. We should not become discouraged because sometimes people say, I've been miserable all my life. Will it ever end? We tell them there's good news. When death comes, it ends. But that's very temporary way of looking at happiness, isn't it? Which is why Bhagavatam says the material conception of happiness is temporary cessation of misery. It's like taking a Panadol. You take it because you have a headache and you genuinely believe that, well, at least the headache is gone. But you and I know now that it is just suppressed. That's why 4 hours later you have to take your next Panadol. But that doesn't mean you're happy. So trying to get happiness from this material world is always going to be difficult. And that's why the Devatas say that the living entities cannot get anything that is permanent. And the verse Tasyeva heto prayeta kovido says that if you're really intelligent, you will realize that actually you don't have to run after happiness. Because according to the quota of your life, you will get happiness. And have you noticed the other thing? Nobody runs after miseries in this world, but the miseries are always running after us. We run after happiness, misery runs after us. So when we catch the happiness, guess who catches us also? The miseries catch us. And that is why while we have happiness on one side of the coin, we also have misery on the other side of the coin. And that's why Prahlad Maharaj says this so nicely. He says, I think in 7th canto, 9th chapter, I think it's 17th or 18th verse. Yasmat priya apriya viyoga samyoga janma sok aknina sakala yoni shudaya manaha dukkaushadam tarapi dukkham atadhyayam bhuman brahmami vadame tavadasya yogam. So he gives this perspective very nicely. And he says that because of a combination of pleasing and displeasing circumstances, our life is always made up of this. We get attracted to an object. The object is very pleasing. But because we have expectations from that object, because it is pleasing, after a while, there is also disappointment. Have you noticed how when someone is very nice, or when somebody praises you so much, they say, Prabhu, you're very nice, very nice. Actually, you should become very scared. Why? Because when he praises you, he thinks you can do no wrong. But you are a human being. Eventually, because he's praising you, his expectation is going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Which means the next time you do something which is not up to expectation, then it becomes displeasing. That is why in this material world, ironically, the persons whom we love most are the ones who hurt us the most. Not because of them, but because of our unnecessary expectations on them. That is why it is stated in Bhagavatam that we should accept the lotus feet of the Lord. You read the purport, and Prabhupada says, we should accept the lotus feet of the Lord. If we expect the lotus feet of the Lord, we will become disappointed. So Bhagavatam, Prahlad Maharaj says, we become happy when something is pleasing, but the same thing which is pleasing today becomes highly displeasing tomorrow. And after a while, we can't take it. So life is always about pleasure, displeasure. That's how it is. And the second thing that comes in life, Prahlad Maharaj says, is this idea of sometimes we are united with that object, sometimes we are separated from the object. Sometimes we accept it, sometimes we reject it. When we accept, very often we are happy. But when we accept it and we think we own it, then eventually that thing will become very painful to us. Very, very painful to us. That's why Bhagavatam tells us, if you want to start the process of being happy in this world, the first thing we should understand is we came with nothing and we will go with nothing. That is the first thing we should understand. As it is, nothing belongs to us. Our husbands, our wives, our children, they are not our property. They are only there for us to serve. When we serve, there is satisfaction. But if we think we own them, and if we think that we should expect them to take care of us, then it becomes difficult. When parents grow old, the natural expectation is children must take care of us. But there is no written law that they have to, even though they should. And what happens in Kali Yuga is very often they don't. And when that happens, parents become very sad. But if the parents are devotees and they know that why to depend on anyone except Krishna, then they become very peaceful. They know that they are always in the safe lotus hands and lotus feet of Sri Sri Radha Govinda Madhav. And therefore they are free of anxiety. If someone comes to help them, Hari Bol. If someone doesn't come, it's all right. This is how they live. And that's why Prahlad Maharaj says, Dukkhaushadam tadapi dukkham matadhyayam. The material problems that we want to solve, the solutions are worse than the problems themselves. You love someone, and then he or she doesn't love you. You turn away from them and you go to another object of love. And eventually that person also rejects you. Then where are you going to go? So that is why we live in a world where we are just running after the wrong things. The Devatas say, you cannot be happy in this world very often because you're overwhelmed by miseries. And there are 3 kinds of miseries that Prabhupada writes here. And sometimes as devotees we take it for granted. But we should always remember that the tendency for us to be overwhelmed by the threefold miseries is very powerful. The first misery is misery caused by others. Have you not noticed in life how very often, no matter what we do in life, no matter how good we are, very often not so good things happen to us. Even the best of persons, they find that many good things that should happen to them don't happen. In fact, sometimes we ask, why do bad things happen to good people? Because we live in a world where this material misery is very powerful. And sometimes we don't realize that no matter how we are living now, we have our past karmas. And they very often come to haunt us, or they catch us at some point. The second misery is misery caused by supernatural forces. It sounds magical, but actually it's not. It's just the disasters that happen in the world, the natural disasters. And today no one can deny that the disasters of the world are just becoming much more increased with frequency. Every other day, some place there is a drought, some place there are floods, some days there are earthquakes. You know, being brought up in Singapore and born in Singapore, you grow up thinking that, you will never face an earthquake in your life because, everybody takes pains to tell you, well, we are very well taken care of. No tsunami will hit us. There's no drought in Singapore, even though it's very hot. Rains just pour a little bit here and there. No typhoon, no cyclones, right? There's no volcanoes in Singapore, so don't have to worry about eruptions. And so far, so good, no earthquake also. Maybe something will rattle somewhere when something happens in Batam, Bintan, or Indonesia. So when I went to India in 2001, I can't remember, the big Gujarat earthquake, 2000, right, Prabhu? Yeah, we were on the field, and it was a groundbreaking ceremony. It was really a groundbreaking ceremony in Dwarka for the new temple, and really the ground broke, and we were inside. We were right inside the pit, opening up everything, putting Narayana Shila and putting Anantasesh into the ground. And the moment Anantasesh touched the ground just rattled. And we were all saying, this is very nice. Until the buildings around us also started rattling. And then as we started coming out, we realized that cracks were just opening up across the guest house. Balconies were falling. People on balconies were falling. People were just jumping out. We had no idea. And that's when I realized, okay, maybe I thought I was giddy. Maybe I thought I had a headache. But when everybody looked like they also were thinking they had a headache, then I knew this was an earthquake. And all the devotees didn't know what to do. The chief pujari from Dwarkadish temple, who was there to officiate the ceremony, he looked at all the devotees and realized nobody's chanting. So he started chanting. And the moment he chanted, then the devotees realized, oh yeah, we are devotees. We're supposed to chant. And then everybody chanted. And I remember my Guru Maharaj was upstairs in the guest house, and the guest house was swaying up and down, and we had a very rickety staircase to climb up. And half the staircase was just cracking as we climbed all the way up. We went up, and into his room, there were two live members sitting down. Their faces were white. They wanted to run out, but Maharaj was telling them, we read Bhagavatam and die, that's better. And they were thinking, I think we should leave, So we went up to Maharaj and we asked him, Maharaj, I think there's an earthquake, you should leave. Maharaj said, whether I leave now, leave later, what's the problem? It's a good time for us to read Bhagavatam. If Krishna wants, at least we read and go. So we decided, no, Maharaj, I think you have to stay on a little while longer. So we carried him and we moved down, and the live members were more than relieved to come down with us. And the moment we reached down, the earthquake stopped. And I remember when Maharaj took the class, he said, when I looked at all of you when I came down, I saw the face of death on everyone. There was so much fear. And that's why this second misery is so powerful that when I was there, I realized one thing. There is nothing you can do when it hits you. We were only fortunate by the grace of the Lord and by the fact that we were on an open ground. Otherwise, we were finished. And 3 days we had no communication. As we came back, right, on road, because everything else was down, as we passed by the coastal sides of Gujarat, we saw bodies of farmers and fishermen 15, 20 feet high up on the branches of the trees, because the tsunamis had hit just after the earthquake. And then we realized that over 1,000 people actually perished. We had no clue. Dwarkadish just sheltered us at the shade of his lotus feet. That's the second misery. And the third misery is the worst misery of all. It's misery caused by ourselves to ourselves. And sometimes, as Prabhu is laughing, sometimes really we think this is the most crazy misery, because it is the misery of speculation. It is misery caused by our own mind. Supposing I look at Balakrishna Prabhu, everyone is smiling at me except him. Of course, he's smiling now. But he looks very fierce and stern. And I keep looking at my nose, but I look at him and I think, why is he looking so angry? And after a while I'm giving class, half my mind is on Balakrishna Prabhu. And after a while, I become disturbed. Maybe I and you say Hare Krishna to each other all the time. But after today, tomorrow when we meet each other, he ignores me, doesn't say Hare Krishna to me. Then my mind starts speculating why he didn't say something, why he didn't smile to me. Sometimes we go for events, weddings and social function. We walk in and then there is a group of people who are talking to each other. They just ignore you. And then your whole program is gone. You go home thinking why they didn't talk to me. Sometimes they get upset. Oh, they talked to my husband, they didn't speak to me. That becomes worse. Things like that. Because the mind is the seat of speculation. And therefore, this misery is a real misery. It is a real misery. Sometimes nothing is there. Nothing has happened. But we concoct and concoct and concoct. And it becomes a great source of misery. There was a very famous wise man from West Bengal known as Gopal. Prabhupada speaks this, he gives this illustration. He said that this Gopal one day was sitting in his house and he was just reading and chanting. Suddenly he heard his neighbors shouting and fighting with each other, elderly man and woman. He knocked on their door and asked, why are you two fighting? And the husband said that we were discussing that I have some money now in my savings and I think it would be good for me to buy a cow. And after buying a cow, we can get some nice milk. So then I was saying, when I get the milk, we will keep some pots and then we will rear some more cows. So she said that when you get some nice milk, I want to give it to my father and mother. So Gopal said, why only your mother and father? Why not my mother and father? Why you're not thinking of them? And she said, no, I didn't say that. And they started fighting. And they were quarreling like anything. So Gopal asked them, where's the cow? He said, no, we are planning. We haven't bought the cow yet. And then after that, Gopal went outside. He took a stick. He came back and he started beating the old man. So the wife said, why are you beating him like that? And Gopal told him, I'm beating you because now your cow has walked into my grass patch and it's eating all the fruits in my garden. And the old man said, Gopal, I haven't even bought the cow. And Gopal said, if you haven't bought the cow and you're fighting about whether mother-in-law should get it or my mother should get it, why should not I beat you now? Because your cow will eventually come into my area of garden and eat fruits. Nothing was there. No cow was bought. But even then we speculate. So that is why the Devatas tell us that actually in this material world, when we accept and reject anything to do with matter, the result is always misery or the cousin of misery, which is anxiety. Some people claim in this world, we're not miserable, we're quite happy. But no one can claim that they are not anxious. Anxiety is the cousin of misery. Eventually, anxiety will upgrade itself to misery. It's only a question of time. So that is the first point in this verse that's important. But then the Devatas say something very important there. They say that the only way to counter this lack of happiness in your life, this dissatisfaction in your life, is very simple. Take shelter of the shade of the lotus feet of the Lord. And that is what they tell you. And how do we do that? We do that by taking shelter of Krishna. And how do we do that? We do that by practicing devotional service. Sometimes people ask the question, what does it mean to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord? Do we just fall at his lotus feet? Prabhupada makes it very clear. Prabhupada says that if you want to accept the lotus feet of the Lord, then you must perform sincere, loving, and unflinching devotional service to him. Sincere means there must be no duplicity. In our heart, there must only be Krishna. That is why in Bhagavatam it is stated in Nectar of Devotion it is stated as Anya Bilashita Sunyam. In other words, without material desire, we should approach Krishna. Material desires will always come and go, but it doesn't mean they will actually satisfy us. The real point that we should understand is that spiritual life will satisfy us. Devotional service is the only solution to permanent happiness. And that's why Prabhupada writes here that Prabhupada defines devotional service very nicely. In the second part of the purport, Prabhupada says devotional service is not sentimental, neither is it mundane. Sentimental means very often that we think that it is a collection of feelings. But you will realize that devotional service is actually a lifestyle. It is not just a matter of, I feel for Krishna. But the question is, what are you doing for Krishna? That's what Prabhupada wanted. Prabhupada wanted that we should do something for Krishna. If you read Lilamrita, there was one disciple of Prabhupada. Every time Prabhupada passed by in the temple, he would stand there and glorify Prabhupada. Oh, Prabhupada, savior of the world. Oh, Prabhupada, pure devotee. Oh, Prabhupada, this and Prabhupada that. And Prabhupada tolerated it once or twice. But one morning when he did that again after Prabhupada gave class, Prabhupada turned to him and said, why don't you go and do something? Do something for Krishna instead of just speaking and speaking and speaking. So that's a very important point for us to understand. Devotional service means action. That's why the opposite of being sentimental is to be a realist. And in Bhagavatam, a realist is a person who understands the nature of the material world, and he is convinced that until he connects to Krishna and until he assimilates Krishna into his life, he will always be dissatisfied. And the best realist that we know of is Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj had such a difficult time in his life. Born into a family of devotees, but even before he was born, his life was threatened. Even before he was born, Ashwatthama had wanted to kill him. But because even in the womb of his mother, he was unflinchingly attached to Krishna, and because Uttara, his mother, was actually a devotee of Krishna, by the shade of the lotus feet of his devotee mother, he became protected. That is why in our parampara, the reason why we celebrate Vyas Puja, the reason why we glorify spiritual personalities who are all here present before us, is because until we take the shade of their lotus feet, Krishna doesn't become very pleased. In fact, Krishna becomes more pleased when we take the shade of their lotus feet as opposed to directly taking the shade of his lotus feet. When Krishna and Arjuna decided to set fire to the forest so that the inhabitants of the forest fire, those who were causing trouble, they could be flushed out, so many beings who were demonic, they were actually vanquished, except for one demon, and that was Mayadanava. And if you read that episode, you'll find that somehow, because Mayadanava was very powerful as a sorcerer, he somehow or another managed to find his way out of that forest fire. And when he came out, of all people he should see, he saw Krishna and Arjuna. These were the same persons whom he wanted to avoid. Could have come out in any other part of the forest exit, but he came out directly facing them. What did Mayadanava do? In desperation, he went to the lotus feet of Arjuna, not Krishna, and he begged him to give him shelter. Ordinarily, if we were standing next to even our best friend, and someone came and fell at his feet and ignored us, we won't feel so happy. Especially if we have pride in our heart. We'll say, no, wait a minute, I'm the senior devotee. In this case, imagine how Krishna may have felt. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, but Mayadanava chose to fall at the feet of Arjuna. But when he did that, this is why Krishna is supreme. Not only is he supreme personality, but he's supreme as the embodiment of humility. Krishna became so pleased that the demon had fallen at the lotus feet of his devotee, that even though he was sworn to destroy these demonic elements, he actually gave the benediction that Mayadanava should survive this forest fire. And that is why in the 7th canto of Bhagavatam, you'll find that when Mayadanava tried to protect all the demons, when Lord Shiva as Tripurari tried to set fire to the cities of iron, gold and silver, you'll find that Krishna decided that he would put an end to the demonic presence. And he walked into the palace of the demons in the form of a cow. And he actually got Brahmaji to come with him in the form of a calf. And in the afternoon, they walked into the demon entrance, walked into the area where the lake was, and that was the lake created by Mayadanava, and which was rejuvenating all the demonic forces to fight the Devatas. He and Brahma drank up all the water in the lake. Only Krishna can do that. And when he did that, all the forces, all the demons, they took up weapons to fight, except Mayadanava. Bhagavatam tells us Mayadanava looked at the cow and the calf, And because he had touched the lotus feet of Arjuna a long time ago, Krishna gave him the intelligence to understand. He gave him the inspiration from within to understand. He gave him the knowledge, Tesham Satata Yuktanam, to understand that this is the plan of Krishna. And that's why he stopped the demonic forces. And in 7:10:64, if you read the verse and the purport, he says very nicely that, my dear friends, do not try to oppose what is happening now, because this is the plan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And whatever is his plan, whatever is his order, cannot be reversed by any man, any animal, any inhabitant. And Prabhupada writes in the purport that whatever is Krishna's plan for us, those who accept his plan, they learn the secret to everlasting happiness. But those who resist his plan, they are always in a state of anxiety. The day we learn to accept the plan of the Lord with full heart, through the agency of the pure devotees, then our life becomes sublime. That is the actual meaning of accepting the lotus feet of the Lord. That's the meaning of surrendering and taking the shade of the lotus feet of the Lord. It is not sentimental. It is actually a science. And how should it be done? It should be done by way of practice and by way of experience. Yaswanubhava akila srutisaram ekam. In that verse, there is a description of Shukadev Goswami. And the word that is important is swa anubhava. Anubhava means experience. Swa means my personal experience. So Prabhupada writes in the purport that devotional service is actually your experience, but it is the practice of devotional service assimilated into your experience. That is the meaning of reality. Reality means whatever that we learn in Bhagavatam, we must apply in our lives. If we don't apply it to our lives, then it remains sentimental and it remains mundane. If it is just a matter of, oh, I feel so inspired and I just cry, but after the class, nothing is done to change my life, then what is the value of it? One sadhu was sitting down and he was giving class in Bhagavatam. And in the audience, he saw one elderly lady sitting in the corner and tears were coming from her eyes. So sadhu thought, this lady must be very advanced devotee. At the end of the lecture, he called her and said, I want to know why there was tears in your eyes. What was your mood? What was the kind of thinking that you had? Because we were speaking about Krishna. And the lady said, my dear sadhu, you have such a long beard. When I saw your beard, I was thinking of my pet goat. I have a pet goat whose beard reminded me just of you. And the poor fellow died 2 days ago. So when I saw your beard, I thought of my dear goat and how much I miss my goat. And therefore I am crying. So Prabhupada used this illustration to tell us that devotional service is not about some sentiment. It is actually about how we change our lives. The more we hear, the more we will change our lives. And that's why we are here. And that's why Prabhupada ends the purport by saying that the best way to do this is to receive proper knowledge. And it is true. Prabhupada writes in the purport that without proper knowledge of who Krishna is, how can you develop a relationship with Krishna? Remember yesterday, Padmanayan Prabhu from Mayapur Institute, he was telling us the importance of studying Srila Prabhupada's books. How will we know why we chant? How will we know why we are praying to Radha Govinda Madhav? How will we know how to properly worship them if we don't read the manuals? How will you know how to repair something if you don't read the manual? If you just tell yourself, I will just try something. By trial and error, you probably destroy what you have. But by following the authorities, you will then grow in devotional service. And that is why transcendental knowledge will bring happiness. The word transcendental is important because transcend means to cross over. And that's why the Devatas pray here that the living entities cannot be happy because they are overwhelmed by the miseries. But the only way to come out of this overwhelming misery is to transcend it. And to transcend it means we must get spiritual knowledge. And in the second canto, 3rd chapter, 12th verse, what is the power of transcendental knowledge is given by Bhagavatam. It is stated that transcendental knowledge must always be in relation with the Supreme Lord Hari. Number one, always remember. Do not acquire transcendental knowledge because you want to become a parrot or you become a great scholar. We don't learn shlokas because we want to impress someone. Then it is not in relation to Lord Hari. If we want to learn transcendental knowledge, it must always be in relation to glorifying Krishna. The gopis were not educated. They didn't study Bhagavatam. They didn't even know one shloka. But everything they did was in relation to Lord Hari. And that is why they were always absorbed in remembering Krishna. So that's the first qualification of knowledge. It must be in relation to Lord Hari. When it is in relation to Lord Hari, that means Krishna becomes the center of our lives. Everything we do, Krishna starts. See the house. Pasaripur could easily have just gotten the house and then tomorrow shift in and just start his life. But he did not do that. He decided we have to find an auspicious day, and today is very auspicious day. Is it the day when Tamakrishna Maharaj took sannyas, bro? Jai. It's actually the day when His Holiness Tamakrishna Goswami Maharaj took sannyas. That by itself makes it auspicious. It's also Vasanta Panchami? It is, right? Yeah, so it's very powerful. Today is a very auspicious day. And what did he do? He decided that the best way to create auspiciousness is actually to do something in relation with Lord Hari. That's how Prabhu has put what he has learned into practice. And that's why this is devotional service. That's the practical application. So that's why in the morning we had chanting. That's why we had a nice yajna. And that's why we're doing Bhagavatam. And in 5 minutes we are going to hear Maharaj speaking in his lecture. That is the reason why it is in relation to Lord Hari. And when that happens, then one very important thing comes as a result of this knowledge. This transcendental knowledge will result in the complete suspension of the waves and the whirlpools of the material molds. Whirlpools, whirlpools are very powerful. The biggest whirlpool in the world is in Norway. It's known as the maelstrom. It is so big that even large ships can be sucked in if you're not careful. So our lives can also become like whirlpools. If we are not careful, we'll be sucked into some problem all the time. Today is this, tomorrow it is that, day after is something else. It's always a whirlpool. Do we want to live a life like that? Or do we want to come to Krishna and stop and suspend the whirlpool? That's why chanting and doing devotional service will free us. And last point, when we come to knowledge, this transcendental knowledge, it becomes self-satisfying. Every time you feel dissatisfied with life, just open up Bhagavatam, take any verse you want and just read it very loudly. And you find immediately your heart becomes satisfied. If you're very upset with your husband, wife, and you feel like killing them, refrain from it. Open up the Bhagavatam, don't argue with them, read Bhagavatam very loud. You can do it even in front of them. Of course, their blood pressure will go up first. But after a while, when they hear Bhagavatam, right, the blood pressure will come down. Try it. It really helps. It really helps. And when that happens, you become self-satisfied. They also become self-satisfied. And who cannot be attracted to such knowledge? That's what Bhagavatam is asking. This is why all the great devotees of the Lord, they lived their life in such a way that they accepted the lotus feet of Krishna. And Brahmaji sums up this whole point so nicely by saying that the lotus feet of Krishna is like a boat. What is that verse? Samasritaye padapallava plavam param padam punya yasho murare bhavarambudhir vatsa padam param padam padam yad vipadam natesham. So if you look at the translation is Krishna's lotus feet is compared to a boat. And what does the boat do? The boat carries us from one end of the ocean to the other, from shore to shore. That's the purpose of a boat. And the only boat that doesn't sink in this world is the lotus feet of Krishna. And Brahmaji says, your feet are so safe and secure and so powerful as a boat that even though it is such a difficult life that we lead, like an ocean of birth and death, When we take shelter of your lotus feet through the platform of devotional service and by serving the devotees, what happens to us? Crossing these difficulties in life becomes just like crossing the water which is found in the hoof print of a cow. Bavar ambudir vatsapadam parampadam. Vatsapadam, the stepping of a hoof of a calf. You know, when the calf steps in muddy spot, what happens is you have the hoof print, and then later it rains. When it rains, there's a little bit of water in it. Even a child can cross it. Not very difficult. That's why whenever we see problems in our life which seem insurmountable, remember this point that Brahmaji says. The reason why it appears insurmountable, Prabhu's Matajis, is because we have not accepted the lotus feet of Krishna yet. That is why the problem looks very difficult. The moment we take shelter of his lotus feet by scrutinizingly studying Bhagavatam, by plunging ourselves into devotional service, by chanting incessantly, then you'll find that day the problems that appear before us, very easily we can cross it. We can easily cross it. And that's why knowledge of what we are doing is needed. But does it mean Prabhupada ends by saying that we must just pursue knowledge? No. That is why the verse Vasudeve Bhagavati is given here. Because it tells us that the moment you chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Krishna from within our heart, Tesham Satata Yuktanam, Bhajatam Preeti Purvakam, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam, what is it? Yenamam Upayanti Te. The moment we chant Krishna's names, the moment we try to study the Gita, the moment we try to serve the devotees, even if you serve prasadam in the center, even if you come and just clean the center, all knowledge is revealed to you. One gentleman came to see Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj with a lot of questions. Very, very philosophical questions. You know, sometimes people are very smart. They have so many philosophical questions, but they never act on it after they get answers. It's just for the sake of asking. So he came with that mood of challenging Bhaktisiddhanta. I have so many questions. I want to ask you questions. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, fine, you can ask questions. I'm ready to answer. But in the meantime, why don't you go downstairs to the kitchen and do some menial service with my disciples? Go and clean the kitchen. Go and do some work. Then come back, I'll answer everything. So the man spent an entire day with the devotees cleaning and washing and washing. By the time he came upstairs, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur asked him, so now I'm ready to answer your questions. Where are your questions? And he said, just by sitting with the devotees, just by hearing them talk about bhakti as we are doing service, all my questions have been answered. Because transcendental knowledge is revealed knowledge. It is not acquired knowledge. It is revealed. And it can only be revealed when we accept the lotus feet of Krishna. Krishna becomes attracted to humility. And on the basis of humility, Tesham Satata Yuktanam, he will reveal what needs to be given to us. We don't have to become scholars. Nanda Maharaj was not a scholar. One night he went to Saraswati river with all his associates, and all the cowherd men, they sat down. They were there because they wanted to celebrate Shivaratri. They took bath in the river Saraswati. They prayed to goddess Ambika, and after everything, they went to sleep. But because they were there, they did not realize that there was a demonic, huge, monstrous snake lying just around the riverside, and they had disturbed it. In the night, it came out, and seeing Nanda Maharaj, it immediately started swallowing it, trying to bite. It actually fixed its jaws on the feet of Nanda Maharaj. And as it started swallowing Nanda Maharaj started shouting. The first thing Nanda Maharaj shouted when you read Krishna book is, my dear son Krishna, please save me. My dear son Krishna, please save me. Something is eating me. You must save me now. This is the mood of a devotee. Whenever a devotee is in danger or anxiety, the devotee doesn't think of material solutions. The devotee first of all places his heart and his faith as a repository on the lotus feet of Krishna. So when Nanda Maharaj called out without anything in his heart for Krishna, at that point of time, all the other cowherd men woke up. They tried very hard to pull Nanda Maharaj from the mouth of the snake, but couldn't. Bhagavatam tells us they took these torches and tried to light up the snake with the fire. But it was not possible. So powerful was the serpent. But the moment Krishna heard Nanda Maharaj calling him, within no time he came. And when he came, what did he do? He looked at the snake, he looked at Nanda Maharaj, he simply took one of his foot and he placed it on the head of the snake. Didn't tear the snake apart or anything. Just put the foot on the head of the snake. And the moment he did that, the snake immediately stopped swallowing Nanda Maharaj. And it turned into a beautiful effulgent being known as a Vidyadhar. Vidyadhar are a class of beings that are found in the Vedic cosmology. They have their own planet. They're very, very beautiful. They look almost like Gandharvas. So the moment he turned into a beautiful being, Nanda Maharaj was saved. And Krishna looked at him and asked him, "Who are you, O personality? Why must you do such a terrible thing and become a snake and try to swallow my father?" And the Vidyadhar said, "My dear Lord, once upon a time I was a very brilliant personality as you see me. And I was traveling in intergalactic travel when one day I saw the great sage Aitreya. And when I saw him, I suddenly looked at his body because he was so emancipated. I actually offended him in my heart and I criticized his look. Why? Because I was very proud of my own beauty." That is the reason why we cannot accept the lotus feet of Krishna. When we are filled with false ego, pride, illusion, when we think only we are right, when we think we are the best devotees, then we have lost the lotus feet of Krishna. It may look like we are actually devotees, but in our hearts there's so much of lack of satisfaction. Then what happens is we become offensive, and that is a danger. And that's why, because of his actions, he was cursed to become a snake. Not cursed by the rishi, but cursed by the force of providence. So when something happens to us that seems like a curse, please don't blame someone. We should only look at our actions because we have attracted it somehow. So then the Vidyadhar said, "But you are so kind to me, Krishna, that you gave me the touch and the shade of your lotus feet." Not even feet, foot. Just one of your foot touched me. And because of that, you have purified me completely. So even envy, even criticisms, whatever dirt that we have in our heart, the moment we turn to the lotus feet of Radha Govinda Madhav, we are assured just by the touch of their feet, all this can just go. And all knowledge is revealed. And it's very important to understand this because our acharyas say Krishna put his lotus feet on the Vidyadhar, the snake. And by doing that, he purified the snake. But by doing that, he also saved the devotee. Twofold. There are two reasons why Krishna always uses his lotus feet. His lotus feet protects the devotee, but it liberates the living entities from demonic tendencies also. This is the beauty of his lotus feet. It's like a one-stop place where two things can happen simultaneously. There's a wash and clean, purification, and there's always protection of our consciousness. The same thing happened to Kaliya. Kaliya was such an envious snake, but the moment Krishna started dancing on his head, what happened? Every time the lotus feet of Krishna touched one of the hoods of Kaliya, Kaliya's envy became smashed. And all the poison that was in his heart and in his body, because of the poison of envy, it started coming out. Just because Krishna's lotus feet was on his head. He didn't ask for Krishna to dance on him, but Krishna danced anyway. That is his causeless mercy. And when the poison came out, what happened? Kaliya became purified. When the blood came out, Kaliya was almost going to die. And at that point, his wives, the Nagapatni, prayed to Krishna. And Krishna allowed him to survive. Sometimes in our devotional service also, there's so much envy and dirt in our heart. And sometimes Krishna's lotus feet are very soothing, but sometimes lotus feet can also give us the kicks. And we accept the kicks as much as we accept the cooling shade. So you can see in Krishna book also, how wonderful just one pastime of Krishna touching the lotus feet with his lotus feet can change the consciousness of a devotee. The Vidyadhar went back to his position with the blessings of Krishna, and Nanda Maharaj was saved. Nanda Maharaj and all the cowherd men after that spoke of how great and powerful Krishna is. Maybe he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Maybe he is blessed by Narayana, just for a while. And then Krishna did not want them to think that he is too great, because he is only interested in their love. And so he displays the Yoga Maya tendency, and Nanda Maharaj forgets all that Krishna has done, and he says, no. Maybe the Devatas blessed my child. And then through his foot, he just somehow saved us. And that was it. So this is the power of the lotus feet of the Lord. What can we take back from this pastime? Very simple. The lotus feet of the Lord is the only sure way to stop this cycle of happiness, unhappiness, birth and death. If we want to run after true happiness, then please accept the plans of the Lord. Don't expect. The more you expect from this material world, the more the kicks come. But when you accept the lotus feet of the Lord, He gives us the strength to survive all the ups and downs of this material world. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai Srila Gurudev ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki. Is there any question, any comments, any realizations? Pasari Prabhu, would you like to add on? Otherwise, yes, Prabhu.
Sir, in the translation it says shade of the lotus feet. What is
Yes.
that? Why not just lotus feet?
Very nice point. In the translation, it's shade of the lotus feet. As we stated here, when you have shade, the purpose of shade is actually to give you some cooling effect. The lotus feet of the Lord, they don't only give us Krishna consciousness, they don't only give us love of Godhead, but they also soothe us, especially when we are suffering in this material world. That's why when we read Prabhupada's purport and when we read the Devata's prayer, the Devatas start by saying that there is so much misery in this world and the misery afflicts us. But when we take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, the lotus feet is like a cooling shade and it protects us from all the miseries of this world. The shade is like the golden hill that Krishna carried. It protects us from the rain, protects us from the threefold miseries. It protects us from all the inauspicious elements that will come. And that's why it is considered the shade. Shade is always cooling. Have you noticed in a very hot day, if you walk under the shade of a tree, automatically the temperature under the shade is at least half a degree to a degree less. You can test it, it is true. Even in the hottest place. Imagine how much more shady the lotus feet of the Lord must be. Is that helpful, Prabhuji? Thank you very much. Yes, Nitai Prem Prabhu.
Prabhu, as you mentioned that taking the shelter of the lotus feet of Lord stops the whirlpool of three modes of material nature.
Yes.
And a devotee feels satisfaction. So this is something appreciated and understood in the association of devotees.
Yes.
So the moment we go out, the whole material world is charged with sense gratification.
Yes, Prabhu.
So everywhere we see it's all that.
Yes.
So in between we find some people and we try to not convince them, we share them.
Yes.
And these people, they ridicule the devotees, or they ridicule the practitioner.
Okay.
And they say, look, we are more happy because we have so much access to the enjoyment.
Yes.
And you have restricted yourself.
Yes.
So seeing like 100, let's say there is a fire.
Yes.
And 100 people are running in one direction and one person is running in opposite direction.
Yes, Prabhu.
And so then how we will ensure that yes, we are on the right path.
You're talking about the devotee. How does the devotee know he's on the right path? If 100 people tell you that, look, we're very happy, and you seem to be the only one saying, I don't think so, and then you could be wrong. How do we understand that, right? Well, Prabhu, in Bhagavatam it is stated that the majority of people don't believe in Krishna. And it's stated very nicely in Bhagavad Gita that even out of those who take up Krishna consciousness, hardly a few will attain Krishna. So by nature, Prabhu, Krishna consciousness is like diamonds in a shop. Very few people will actually not only appreciate them, but have the propensity to be able to purchase devotional service. It's the nature of the world. The nature of the world is such that there will always be people who are convinced that there is material happiness in this world. We were also. But through our experience, we have found that there is something a little bit more than material happiness and misery. And that's why we are trying to understand that. If our faith is not very strong, and we preach to these people, we can become overwhelmed. Which is why Prabhupada gave a very practical point that until our faith is strong, we should constantly arrange our lifestyle in such a way that we take more association of devotees, and in the association we then try to share Krishna consciousness with those who are not devotees. Otherwise, as you said, eventually we will not be convinced also. But that is because we don't have enough devotee association. That is why we must create a lifestyle where we constantly get association of the Supreme Lord and the devotees. The mind will constantly tell you all the favorable arguments why you should stop devotional service. But that's the nature of the mind, Prabhu. There's nothing surprising about it. And everyone in this world will convince themselves that we are happy. But convincing yourself that you're happy and actually being happy is actually very different. My suggestion to you from my personal experience is that when we approach people who are very happy with their life, we don't have to tell them that their life is not happy. There's no need to tell them that. We can just share with them how happiness is with Krishna consciousness. Don't even have to tell them anything about material consciousness. Just share with them one nice pastime of Krishna. Give them nice practical points of how this happiness is so much more permanent than that which is temporary. I have never met an atheist who could not agree that the happiness in this world is temporary. They will agree. They'll just say that even though it's temporary, it's too sweet for me to give up. That's what they will tell you. But they will acknowledge it. But if you approach them sincerely from your heart to share with them the shade of the lotus feet of the Lord, then your words will not convince them, Prabhu. But Krishna acting through their hearts and seeing your sincerity, He will reveal this knowledge to them. That's how we become instruments. If we think, how can I convince them? We will never be able to convince them because it is false ego. Then we will become convinced by them. And then we will move that way. And as a last point, if there is a fire and the exit is on the right and 100 people go to the left, it's still correct for you to go to the right, Prabhu. Because you're still running away from the fire. 100 people running into fire doesn't make the fire any less a fire. It's still fire. We should cultivate this logic that it doesn't mean that lex populi or vote populi, as we say in Latin, that the majority of people who go in a certain way are therefore right. That's illogical. It's flawed logic, actually. Does that help, Prabhuji? Thank you. We should end now. And Pasai Prabhu, Ramadar Prabhu, are we going to have the lecture of Maharaj? Yes? Okay. There's a nice verse in Bhagavatam. Nirapeksham munim shantam nirvaira samadarshanam anuvrajami aham nityam puye eti renu angribihi. The devotees of the Lord, they are nirapeksham. They have no desire except to serve Krishna. They are munim. Munim means they may have studied so many things, but they are chaste at the lotus feet of Krishna. Shantam, they are very peaceful because they know that the aim of life is Krishna. Nirvairas samadarshanam, they are completely free of envy because they want to only serve the living entities and somehow or another bring them to Krishna. And they are samadarshanam. They see the hand of Krishna in everything, every junction, and they see in every living entity the presence of the Lord. Such devotees are pure devotees. And today I just want to take the opportunity to glorify Nrsimha Maharaj as that pure devotee. This verse in Bhagavatam fits Nrsimha Maharaj perfectly. Because Maharaj has no other desire in his heart except to assist the Lord in his pastimes. He has no desire in his heart except to somehow or another bring the living entities to Krishna. His life is completely dedicated to somehow or another running after the living entities with full compassion and ensuring that somehow or another they take to Krishna consciousness. In all my little dealings with Maharaj, even in the most adverse of situations, in the most adverse of challenges, Maharaj has always taught me that you should see the hand of Krishna. That is the meaning of Samadarshanam, and that is the meaning of Nirvairam. One who sees the hand of Krishna is always free of envy, and he's always Samadarshi. And the beauty of this is because Maharaj has such purity, Anuvrajami aham nityam. Krishna says in Bhagavatam, such a devotee who possesses these 5 qualities, Anuvrajami, I always follow him. Anuvrajami aham nityam. I'm always following him. The devotees run after Krishna's lotus feet, but Krishna runs after such devotees' lotus feet. Why? Because Krishna says, I want to take the dust of such great souls and I want to put it on my head, because that dust purifies the entire universe and it will surely purify me. You will never find a prayer like this in any part of Bhagavatam except in this verse. And that is why great pure devotees like Nrsimha Maharaj have come into this world. They are eternally liberated souls, but they have come. And because they have come, Anuvrajami aham nityam, Krishna has also come. And because of them, we owe a debt that we cannot repay. Because they have come into this world, Krishna has descended. And because of that, we are eternally indebted to them. So this is our humble offering at the lotus feet of Maharaj. Never even in our dreams should we think that without his mercy and without the mercy of the Acharyas, we can ever make advancement in devotional service. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki. His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj ki. His Holiness Bhakti Vigna Vinash Nrsimha Maharaj ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki.
Devakinandan Prabhu ki.
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki.